Sometimes the brightest of lights hide the darkest of shadows. Behind the smiles and laughter, beneath the surface of a kind heart, there are stories untold, pain buried so deep, it never shows, at least not until it's too late. Lavinia Gardner, a woman known for her infectious laugh, her kind soul, and her never-ending ability to make others feel seen, would tragically become a symbol of how a life filled with love and joy can vanish in an instant. A life that would be brutally extinguished in the most unimaginable way, a flame both literal and metaphorical. This was the beginning of a story we don't always want to believe can happen. Two people who seemed so happy, so full of love and promise. But somewhere along the way everything changed. Something broke, something sinister crept into their lives. But what could make someone turn against the person they swore to love forever? Today we're going to take you through a story that will shake you to the core. A love story that went from joy to horror in the blink of an eye. A story of betrayal, rage, and heartbreak. A story that raises one question: what went wrong? You may be asking yourself, how could something so horrific happen between two people who loved each other? How does a relationship go from light to dark so quickly? How does someone become capable of something so cruel, something so unthinkable? From a casual encounter to a whirlwind romance, what seemed like a fairy tale would unravel into something none of us could have seen coming. And the aftermath would shake a community to its core. Stick with us until the end. We're going to take you deep into the story of Lavinia Gardner's tragic death. What happened that day and how a promise of love was shattered in the most brutal way imaginable. A story of rage, betrayal, and loss. A story that will leave you wondering how such a thing could ever happen. Stay with us. This is a journey you won't want to miss. The truth behind this tragedy might just leave you speechless. Lavinia Gardner wasn't just a name in her neighborhood. She was a heart. Born and raised in Chicago, in a neighborhood that's filled with both dreams and hardships, she made a name for herself as the person everyone loved to be around. Her smile could light up even the darkest corners, and she never missed an opportunity to make others feel valued. A woman who thrived on connection and kindness, Lavinia was the center of every gathering, the soul of every party. Growing up, Lavinia was the one who would always lend a helping hand. Whether it was helping her younger brother with his homework, assisting neighbors with their groceries, or simply offering an ear to listen, she was the friend you could always count on. She may have faced her own struggles like we all do, but Lavinia wore them with grace. She never let her hardships define her. Instead, she made a conscious choice to stay positive, to stay hopeful, and to encourage everyone around her to do the same. But even the brightest lights sometimes cast shadows. While Lavinia was the life of every room she entered, behind that smile, behind those laugh lines, there was something deeper. Something that only a few could see. Something no one could have possibly imagined would lead to such heartbreak. Her life wasn't without challenges, and those who were closest to her knew this. But did anyone truly understand what was going on beneath the surface? Was there a darker side of her life that only she knew about, a part that she kept hidden from even her closest friends? Let's take a closer look as we peel back the layers of Lavinia's life to uncover the truth. Henry Taylor, by all accounts, he was a man with a wild side. He wasn't the kind of guy you'd bring home to meet your parents, and there were whispers. Stories of a temper that flared when least expected, a past filled with run-ins with the law, and a reputation that made many raise an eyebrow when they heard his name. But Lavinia? She saw something different. She saw a man who wasn't defined by his past, a man who could change if given the right love. She didn't see a dangerous man. She saw someone who, deep down, just needed a chance to prove himself. And when they met, the chemistry was instant. The connection undeniable. Lavinia, with her laughter and light, seemed to have a magic about her. She could brighten the darkest rooms, lift the heaviest hearts, and for the first time Henry believed in something beyond the chaos of his past. He saw in her a chance for a fresh start, a chance for a love that could change everything. As the days turned into months, Lavinia's hope that Henry could change was tested. Their love wasn't as simple as it once seemed. Behind the smiles and laughter was a growing tension that neither could avoid. Henry's temper, which he had so carefully kept in check, began to surface more often. The cracks in their relationship started to grow. The fights became louder, the silence after each argument heavier. And yet, Lavinia didn't walk away. She believed with all her heart that love could fix him. That love could heal the wounds he carried. But Henry's demons, it seemed, were too great to ignore. And with each passing day, Lavinia found herself falling deeper into the complexity of a relationship that was starting to tear at the very fabric of who she was. Lavinia, despite the mounting tension, was determined to make it work. She had invested so much into their relationship, her heart, her time, her love, and she wasn't ready to walk away. She had believed in Henry from the start. She had believed in the possibility of a better future with him, a future where they would grow together. But what happens when love isn't enough? What happens when the person you're with can't or won't change? What happens when the darkness inside them is too much to overcome? Lavinia knew the answers to those questions, but she wasn't ready to face them, at least not yet. Because love for her was supposed to conquer all. As their relationship deepened, so did the cracks. What began as a love fueled by hope and the possibility of change was quickly overtaken by a growing darkness. The smiles that once filled their days were replaced by angry words, heated exchanges, and tension so thick, it could be felt in the air. Henry, a man once known for his charm and humor, began to reveal a darker, more dangerous side. His temper, once a flicker of a problem in the background, was now in full view, an ever-present threat hanging over them both. He was open about his struggles, even boasting on social media that he didn't care about the consequences of his actions. Jail didn't scare him. Nothing did. Henry had reached a breaking point and it was clear he was spiraling. But Lavinia? She didn't know how to pull him back. She loved him, and with that love she believed against all odds that she could help him change. The signs of their growing disconnect were unmistakable. The arguments became more frequent, more intense. At first they were sporadic, isolated incidents that Lavinia believed could be worked through, just another bump in the road. But as time passed, the fights became a constant. And Henry's temper, once manageable, now seemed like a ticking time bomb. He would lash out, not just with words but with violence. The love he had once shown her was slowly replaced by something more sinister. What Lavinia had once seen as a rough exterior that could be smoothed over was now a permanent fixture in Henry's character. It was no longer just frustration. This was rage, uncontrollable and destructive. He didn't try to hide it. In fact, he flaunted it. He'd speak openly about his anger, as if he was proud of it, as if he welcomed it. "I don't care about going back to prison," he said in one of his live streams. A man who once feared the consequences of his actions now seemed to embrace them, as if nothing mattered anymore. Lavinia had seen this side of him before, but it was different now. She could feel it deep down that something had changed. He wasn't the man she had fallen in love with. This Henry, this angry, reckless version of him, was someone she wasn't sure she could save. Lavinia, in her innocence, believed in the good she saw in Henry. She thought that love could change him, that she could be the one to show him a different path. But the more she tried to hold on to him, the more she tried to save him, the further he pushed her away. She didn't want to give up. She didn't know how to give up. She loved him despite everything. She believed that with enough time he could change, that the man who once held her hand and made her laugh could come back. But as the days passed, the storm she feared began to rage harder and harder. And the more she clung to her hope, the more she realized that it wasn't enough. The man she thought she knew was slipping further into a rage she couldn't control. Lavinia couldn't escape the truth. Her hope, her love, wasn't enough to fix the growing cracks in their relationship. As Henry's anger turned from sporadic outbursts to an everyday presence in their lives, Lavinia realized she was trapped. She had given so much of herself, but it wasn't enough to heal the wounds Henry carried with him. And now, the storm she had always feared, the one she had hoped would never come, was upon them. Every fight, every moment of anger, every word spoken in rage, only pushed them further apart. But Lavinia didn't know how to stop it. She didn't know how to fix something that wasn't broken by her hands, but by forces she couldn't control. Then, on that cold April morning in 2021, everything changed. A love that had once burned with promise was extinguished in a way no one could have ever imagined. In a fit of pure, uncontrollable rage, Henry Taylor did the unthinkable. He set Lavinia on fire. In that moment, everything Lavinia believed about love, about trust, shattered. The man she had stood by, the man she had hoped would change, was now the one who would destroy her. Imagine the terror she must have felt as the flames consumed her body. Picture the pain, her skin melting away, her clothes turning to ash, the searing heat of the fire as she screamed in agony. But despite everything, Lavinia didn't give up. She didn't give in to the pain. She fought with every ounce of strength she had left. Lavinia didn't just run from the flames, she ran from the betrayal of the man who swore to love her, protect her. She ran from the monster he had become. Her body consumed by the fire, her soul broken by the person who had once been her partner, her husband, the one she trusted the most. Her fight for survival was nothing short of heroic. She didn't give up, not even when the fire had ravaged her body. She kept running. She kept fighting. She made it to the firehouse 2 blocks away, desperate for someone to save her. But what happened next wasn't just an act of violence, it was a betrayal of the deepest kind. The man who promised to love her had taken everything from her, and in the end, it would cost her everything. Those were the words that haunted the responders. He wanted to kill me. Lavinia knew deep down that she had been living in danger for a long time, and she was just now realizing the full extent of that danger. She had been running from the flames, but she was also running from a life that had turned into a nightmare. A nightmare of lies, of abuse, of broken promises. Henry had become a stranger to her, and in that moment, when everything was burning, she realized how much he had changed. This wasn't just an act of violence, it was the final, irreversible act of betrayal from someone she had trusted with her heart, her soul, her life. And as the flames consumed her, so too did her belief in the love they once shared. The truth was undeniable. Henry Taylor, the man who had once promised to love and protect Lavinia, had become the very thing he had vowed to fight against. In a moment of blind rage, he took everything from her. The flames that consumed her body were nothing compared to the emotional devastation she had endured at his hands. Lavinia fought for her life, but in the end, despite her strength and courage, the damage was too great. She succumbed to her injuries a month later, leaving behind a community in shock, a family broken by grief, and a world that couldn't understand how a love so pure could end in such tragedy. Lavinia Gardner's story is one of heartbreak, betrayal, and loss. It is a story that asks the question, how could a love that once seemed so real, so full of promise, end in such horror? Her life was taken in a brutal act, but her memory, her spirit, will live on in the hearts of those who knew her. And as for Henry Taylor, his actions can never be undone. But he will face the consequences, and in the end, justice will be served. This is the tragic story of Lavinia Gardner, her fight for survival, her final moments, and the man who betrayed her. A story that will haunt all who hear it, a story that we must never forget. Lavinia fought bravely for her life. Despite the unimaginable pain she endured, she never stopped fighting. The days in the hospital felt endless, and her family held on to a fragile thread of hope, praying for a miracle. But despite all the efforts of the medical staff, despite the strength and courage Lavinia showed, her injuries were too severe. Over a month later, on May 21, 2021, Lavinia passed away. Her family was left to face the harsh reality of the world without her. The woman who had brought so much light into their lives was gone, her vibrant spirit extinguished far too soon. The world she had once brightened now stood in shock and disbelief. How could this happen? How could someone who had been loved so deeply, someone who had so much to live for, be taken away in such a violent, senseless way? Henry's confession was as chilling as it was horrifying. The man who had once vowed to love and protect Lavinia, the man who had promised to be her partner in life, had turned into a monster who took everything from her. In a cold, emotionless statement, he admitted to the horror he had inflicted. He revealed that he had planned the act, that he knew exactly what he was doing when he set Lavinia on fire. He turned himself in, but his confession only left more questions than answers. How could someone who had once loved her, who had once shared a life with her, commit such a brutal act? What drove him to it? And could anyone have seen the warning signs before it was too late? Lavinia's family and friends were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. The woman who had brought joy, who had been the glue holding so many together, was now gone. They were left asking the same question over and over, how could this happen? Henry's actions left them speechless. The betrayal was unimaginable. The man who had been her partner, her best friend, had destroyed the one person who truly believed in him. Lavinia's family and friends couldn't understand how love could turn into hate so suddenly, how something so beautiful could turn so tragic. The question that haunted everyone was simple. How could someone who claimed to love her, someone who had promised to care for her, do this? Was there any hope for their relationship, or was it doomed from the start? Lavinia had given everything to Henry, believed in him when no one else did. She had seen the good in him even when it was hard to see. But in the end, her love wasn't enough to stop the violence, to stop the rage that was consuming him. Her family was left to pick up the pieces. They were forced to say goodbye to a woman who didn't deserve the fate that had been dealt to her. But in their grief, they found strength in the memories she had left behind, her smile, her laugh, the love she had shared. Lavinia Gardner's story didn't end with her death. It lives on in the hearts of those who loved her, in the fight for justice, and in the reminder of how fragile love can be when surrounded by darkness. Her family, her friends, they will never forget her. They will keep her memory alive, and they will fight to ensure that justice is served for the woman who deserved so much more. Lavinia's life was cut short, but her spirit lives on. And as for Henry Taylor, he will face the consequences of his actions. No punishment will ever bring her back, but justice will give her family the closure they deserve. Rest in peace, Lavinia. You will never be forgotten. This was the tragic and heart-wrenching story of Lavinia Gardner, a woman whose life was cut short by the very person she trusted most. Lavinia's life should have been filled with more laughter, more love, and more years to make her mark on this world. Instead, it ended in flames, both literal and symbolic. Her story serves as a powerful reminder of the dangers of unchecked anger, toxic relationships, and the consequences of not seeking help before it's too late. Henry Taylor will face justice for his actions, but no punishment can ever undo the pain he caused. No sentence will bring Lavinia back to her family, to her friends, or to a world that was made better by her presence. But what we can do now is ensure that her story is never forgotten. Her loved ones will carry her memory with them forever, and it's up to us to do the same. May Lavinia's story be a wake-up call for all of us, a reminder to recognize the signs of abuse, to notice when someone is in danger, and to never ignore the red flags that can lead to destruction. We all have the power to prevent this kind of tragedy. We can learn from Lavinia's story, and we can help others before it's too late. Rest in peace, Lavinia. Your story will not be forgotten, and we will honor you by spreading awareness, by talking about the dangers of toxic relationships, and by making sure that no one else suffers the way you did. Thank you for watching. If you or someone you know is experiencing abuse, please reach out to a trusted individual or helpline. Don't wait until it's too late. Stay safe and stay strong.